So, Bandai Namco, what's on the menu tonight? Oh, it's some Munchables. Now this is gonna be yummy. Namco has been known to make tons of obscure titles over the years, with many of them not getting the coverage they really need despite their potential and quality. Enter our review target for today, The Munchables, released in 2009 exclusively on the Wii, developed by Bandai Namco themselves. This game was something that mostly flew under the radar amongst the Wii library, and while it has slowly gone a cult following, even with a few reviews of the game coming out, it hasn't really gotten any detailed reviews, nor any large fandom, despite it coming from a major studio, and it's having some of a cult fan base already. So is this game a gem, or is it a turd? Let's find out in this delectable adventure. So, from the whole minute or so of gameplay that I've shown so far, you would expect the lore of this game to be strange and odd, and yes, it's as strange as you think it is. And if you don't believe me, well, let me explain the basic synopsis to you. So this game takes place on the planet of Starving, where a spherical race of monster called the Munchables eats all day, and you know what happens when you eat? You poop, and that's what these Munchables do to make their power source, called orbs, for them to have prosperous lives, along with the big poo spiral referred to as the legendary orb, which powers each land. Yeah, I told you it gets odd. While the planet itself was peaceful, the peacefulness of it was challenged when the space pirates made of food, referred to as Tabima monsters, started to attack. The Great Elder, who guarded the world, and the race of the Munchables, take Chomper, a spiky fellow, and Munchy, a more feminine type, to safety as the Great Elder thinks of a plan. But what Chomper and Munchy have on their minds is the tastiness of the Tabima monsters themselves. And thus starts our adventure to all 7 islands of Starving to meet all the nice inhabitants of the planet and get all those legendary orbs back. Now, while I do want to go deeper into the plot of this story, as it does take some interesting turns, I'll save that for the spoiler section, however, as it does provide a slightly dark realization to the plot. Like, seriously, this is some big twist kind of ordeal. So how does the lore of the game fare overall? Well, it's very creative, fun, it provides some nice characters to attach to, and hey, if you don't care for the plot, it can be ignored without too much loss, so it has something for everybody. The presentation for this game is honestly rather great. Graphically, for a 2009 Wii game, it looks rather nice and fun. Every environment is fun to explore and has some nice details to it as well. Some standouts include Gulp Sea, Big Blue Sky, and Dessert Factory, but even the weak-looking environment still look great for a Wii game. Along with that, there's some simple yet high-quality models and textures to avoid the problem of many Wii games looking boring and dated. I also quite like how the levels have a nice progression to them, with you sizing up and making the worlds feel big, despite the honestly quite small size of the maps themselves. Even the cutscenes and menus have a nice charm to them with a paper graphic aesthetic as well, that honestly makes it look very unique, and helps it separate itself from the in-game models. The music as well. So good. Seriously, there are excellent listens in-game and outside the game as well, and I highly encourage everyone who is interested in this OST to listen to it after this video. It's even in-game as well via the sound test menu. It's that good. In fact, it's one of the few things I've seen consistently online about the game, is the OST. It manages to blend a lot of styles for each world, and makes the OST have a distinct taste compared to other games. It gives me vibes of a lot of things as well. For example, Starving Island reminds me a lot of Yoshi Story's main theme, only way less sappy and way more energetic. It helps the game feel a lot more real as well, despite being in this cartoon magic world. My personal highlights are Starving Island, 2000 Leagues of Feast, Chocolate Dining, Greenish Illusion, and especially Panic Restaurant. Seriously, there's a reason why that track's so iconic with the Munchables. It's that unique and just screams this game's identity very well. Even with the presentation's perfections though, I still see some rough spots. Mostly nitpicks on my part, but I still think they're kind of a little bit of flaws. Such as the fact that some environments can look rather weak compared to the rest of the game, which could show that this is a low priority in Namco, and I honestly could never get into Sizzling Paradise in the same way I could with the other tracks in the game, despite it also being a good song as well. So yeah, this game's presentation is a major highlight, but even with a good presentation, we can't have a great game until we get into... Yeah, that. So how does this game play, you may be asking? Well, have you ever played a Katamari game? Because it plays very similar to that, with you having to eat the enemies by pressing the eat button on one of 4 different controller types. I'm personally using the GameCube controller for my preference, but you can also play with a few other controller types, in order to grow and eat more enemies at certain levels to defeat them. It's a very satisfying thing to do, and I encourage you to risk and eat more stuff to grow, or you could take the safe route in order to avoid damage. But how does the Munchables differ from this formula, you may be asking? Well, first is the choice of 2 characters at the start of the game, Chomper and Munchy, and while they don't play all that differently, they do offer their trade-offs that may make you pick a preference. Chomper has a longer attack, and Munchy has a longer turbo eat. Yeah, speaking of those mechanics, we should probably talk about them. First is attacking, where you use the attack button to split up your enemies into multiple easier-to-eat enemies. While there is a risk of the enemies overwhelming you, due to how much you have to attack them, and they can merge back together, the reward you get is a very good opportunity to do more combos. In fact, splitting enemies allows for great combos with the turbo eat. Speaking of that, if you hold down the eat button, wait, and let go, you can do a turbo eat that'll eat every equal or low level enemy in its path. And it's great for combos as well, and increases the flow and pace of the stages greatly. Seriously, it's so satisfying to do a turbo eat with many enemies. There's also jumping as well that allows you to jump, duh. While there is some sort of platforming in the game, it takes a backseat to the eating, but it still adds a good level of verticality and helps the game stand out as well. So now that we know how the game plays and its mechanics, let's talk about its difficulty and structure. So there's 8 worlds in the game, and within those worlds there are 3 levels. Level 1 has a unique objective, level 2 requires you to kill a massive pirate, and finally the boss level of course has a boss. This structure works very well for the most part, though I do feel like level 2 objectives get kind of repetitive after a while, and I think adding a few more levels will help it considerably, considering how quickly you can complete most of these levels. The difficulty itself is also very fair and fun, though it does veer very much into the easy side, like most Kirby games. And like most Kirby games, the fun mostly overrides the difficulty and allows for a fun relaxing time, and allows you to focus on completionism. Though this game does have a very bad habit of hand-holding players with its objectives. Like, I know this was made for a younger audience, but even if I was a kid in the target age group, I would feel very insulted and skip them. Also the fact that while you can get hit and die, it happens so infrequently that I only die once in the whole game by the enemies or any sort of pits or whatever. Now the level design itself is quite great for what it's worth. Sure, some may get tired of its gameplay loop and its easiness, but many others will have the different objectives and gain good scores on levels themselves. The levels also tend to be distinct with their own gimmicks as well. For example, there's fans, and there's an underwater stage even. It's not like the levels are barren either, as long as getting ranks for eating well, there's also acorns in the stages as well, which unlocks some sweet hacks that you can flex on your Munchable. They also have level exploration in the stages as well, even if it isn't all that much by the large shot. Replaying stages and finding acorns you missed as well is also easy thanks to the toilet in the main menu, which is not only a good graph, but can also warp you to the level in question as well, like in the early Spyro games. My favorite part of the level design though, is the amount of power you feel going through sections that you were confined in originally, looking like cakewalks once you reach a high level. It's honestly a nice detail that helps sell the growth of this game a lot more, and I honestly think this is one of the great appeals of the game in my opinion. Even with that great stuff though, there's still a few flaws I should mention with the game. First off is lag. As while the game does have a consistent frame rate 90% of the time, there are a few times where the lag seriously hurts this game, like reaching around 10 FPS if I had to guess. Another thing is the bosses. Yeah, I forgot to mention them, but they're kind of forgettable overall. They're so easy despite the fun concept of them, and they just are very forgettable overall. I think making them less button mashy would help a lot, and making them very longer would help as well. But as the bosses stand now, they're okay and I like their inclusion, but they do feel a little half-assed. The game, at least the main campaign, is also rather on the short side. This isn't a 100% bad thing as every very level is creative and unique, but I think 1 to 3 extra levels would help to make the game more fun and expand the ideas that I thought didn't really give enough attention. But in the end, these are kind of minor issues that don't affect the game too much. So now that we got all that way, let's get into the section that new people who really want to get into the game shouldn't watch, aka spoilers. So later on in the game, after we defeat the Heli Cantaloupe in World 4, we meet our antagonist, Don Onion, in the Onion Layer I suppose, the brother of the Great Elder, and as we move on, we see the dynamic between the two clash. Then after World 6, we get a backstory cutscene done in a scroll style with both the Elder and Dawn as scientists. And it tells us Dawn's great plan overall was to turn the nice veggies of the planet into monstrosities to serve for his world domination plans. The Elder hated this and left the planet of research to go find a more peaceful life. So then after we get the final legendary orb, Dawn acts nice and offers us onto his ship. As it turns out though, it's a trap! So now your Munchable of choice and the Great Elder have to escape through all the mini bosses the game remembers for you. Yeah, like I have a memory of a fish. And that's a huge nitpick in the grand scheme of things, but I'll shut it now. But now we also have the full bosses as well, which also provides some good dialogue and also increase the lore bill a bit. Despite how the boss rushes tend to be a mixed bag, this game does the whole boss rush thing quite well. Probably since the bosses are easy and quick to defeat, but hey, it's at least fun while it lasts. It provides a nice variety after we beat everything else, because it was starting to get a little repetitive after 7 worlds of doing the same kind of stuff. Now though, we escape down to Starving and we're ready to fight Dawn himself. And he has a bad machine on his hands. And it's even powered by the legendary orb itself. And he's going to use it to destroy the planet. The boss battle is actually the best of the whole game, as it's long, has multiple phases, you actually have to try, to a certain extent, in order to win. A major improvement and a great way to start out the boss battles of the game. Also found it funny that you could eat the islands as well. A nice detail if I'm being honest. So we destroy the big machine and Dawn is stopped once and for all. But uh-oh, he has an escape plan. But don't worry, our Munchables managed to eat the ship and stun Dawn once and for all. After all that, we get a shockingly sad end credits, which sounds rather nice, and the game ends here. Or does it? Well, kind of. To clarify, it does end the new levels in the story, but the post-game content is rather large concerning this game, and what you would probably expect. Not only do you unlock an acorn radar, which is good for those remaining acorns you probably miss, but personally me, I already got all the acorns, even despite a little bit of trouble, but you also get a new character, Robo, who combines both strengths of Munchy and Chomper to make a super epic character that's probably the definitive character in the game. There's also a mirror time trial mode where you have to complete the levels in a lot of time to get new hats, and the final few S ranks. Yep, you're even ranked on these as well, which collecting all the S ranks gives you an all new hat. Another hat is also rewarded to those who complete the Tabimon Encyclopedia as well, and adding another level of exploration to the game. You probably missed some of these before, but you'll probably get them as soon as you replay the levels. They're kind of easy to find if I'm being honest. Now, however, you decide to end the game here or do the remaining missions all up on your own. It's kind of a sweet way to get post-game content to the game, without forcing players to be like, oh, you have to actually complete the game this way to get the good ending. Kind of a good compromise if I do say so myself. So that is the Munchables on Wii. Despite being on the easier side and containing some occasional moments of unpolishedness, the Munchables is still a hidden gem and just a great game overall. I'd especially recommend this game to fans of Katamari, Pac-Man, and Kirby, as it has a similar style to those games. I personally give the game an 8 out of 10 on my scale, as it's just a great game that's super solid and fun to play. I would recommend you pick up this title for $30 max, as it's solid enough for time to get mileage out of. So yeah, this is Spacey, and I'm gonna be out of here.